Hello, women in tech and women in tech supporters, and welcome to the Beta in Real Talks, where women talk to women about how to empower more women to lead in tech. My name is Carly Marcel, aka Delta.
And I'm Adriana Leonard, aka Leanie. And we are the hosts of this show and the creators of Beta, which is a fictional series about how two very different women, Leanie and Delta, learn to empower each other to lead in the tech industry.
And to support the larger dialogues on women's empowerment in tech and highlight the importance of representation in both entertainment and technology, two industries that are designing our future, we started a campaign called #BetaIn.
Our mission with #BetaIn is to change the stories around who and what is worth investment in the tech industry. Because, as we all know, change starts with stories, and we need more stories about women in tech.
So as part of that campaign, we partnered with the amazing Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, who is hosting this show in Chicago, to kick off an educational and fun talk show called Beta in Real Talks.
Every week and every episode, we're going to bring you awesome women in tech leaders who are going to share their stories, their perspectives, their challenges, and help guide you through their experiences in various aspects of the industry.
And this week, we're going to a Real Talk, highlighting 4 women in various leadership roles across the tech industry.
But before we bring our guests out, we want to introduce you to the two fictional characters, Leanie and Delta, that were inspired by powerhouse women like these 4 we're going to talk to today. So please enjoy our trailer, and we will be right back.
Oh my God, I hate my job. Just tell them that.
You got me fired.
You got me fired.
You got me fired.
Are you kidding me?
That's me, Leanie. This is Delta. She was my boss.
You're good. You're good.
The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I think you should be an entrepreneur.
Leanie, do you know what that word means?
I know this is something you've always wanted. Now's the time. And the tech industry is all the rage right now.
80% of businesses fail within the first 18 months.
This is gonna be so exciting.
You are brilliant.
I am?
Yes.
What did I say?
I don't want you getting involved in my personal life. You know nothing about me.
I'm your friend.
We are not friends.
A flower never competes with a flower beside it. It just blooms.
What about goggles that recognize images?
Like Google goggles?
Exactly. Oh, I see why that's a problem.
I never realized that we were so much on the same page.
We're totally in the same boat.
So we're going worldwide, baby.
Delta, I was gonna show you that we could.
Hello!
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hello. Hello.
Thank you for joining us today.
We're here. Really excited to have everyone here. We've been looking forward to this.
Yes, very much so. Actually, before we jump into introductions, we just wanted to let the audience know that these women are pros, and if you're exploring different career options or want to know more about how to fast track your path in a tech role, then please do think of questions during the show and go ahead and put those into the comments, and we will be addressing them at the end.
If we want to kick off with intros, though, we'd love to have each of you introduce yourselves. So Michelle, if you want to start, and we'll go Michelle, Ally, and Vikki, Lindsay.
Great. So I'm thrilled to be here. I'm Michelle Mesina. I'm the VP of People for Project 44. And I've been in the tech world. I started my career in tech a while ago. And then I've jumped around to different industries, and I'm back in tech, thrilled to be here. And I've been in HR for quite a long time as well. So tech has always just been something that's exciting, ever moving, dynamic, and same with the people side of things. So it's just been a great intersection for me, and I'm thrilled to be here today.
Great, thanks, Michelle. And
awesome. I will jump in next. My name is Ally Lynch. I am the SVP of Marketing at Project 44, also work with Michelle. I got into tech about 7 years ago. I was working in marketing before then, but for a much larger international corporation, and some very important people in my life, both my now husband and my manager at the time told me to change my career path. It wasn't a fit. I like to move fast and build and create and not follow too much protocol. So you can imagine a large international corporation wasn't really for me. But I didn't know that. So kind of learned along the way and jumped into tech, and about 5 years ago landed at Project 44. And it was just a handful of people at the time. It's now a over 250 global corporation. So my career path at P44 has also been pretty wild to kind of watch it grow along the way. So I'm happy to talk more about that after introductions.
Awesome.
Hi, my name is Vikki Caruso. I am the SVP of People at Clearcover, which is a insurtech company. And I joined in, I started, I don't want to say years because I'm way older than everybody else, but I started in the tech industry by going to work for a startup and just fell in love. I love the pace. I love the craziness. I love the ups and downs every day. When you're off a week, you feel like you're off a month. I think you just either fall in love or you don't. And I definitely fell in love, and I was fortunate enough along that way to meet with Lindsay, who is going to talk to you next. And she's also introduced me to a lot of the companies I've worked for. And now I'm at a Clearcover, which is, we have 162 employees. A year and a half ago, we had 50. So we've had a crazy journey the last year, and we're continuing to grow even in the midst of everything that's happening in the world today. So I'm very excited to be here and especially be on a panel with all these amazing people.
Awesome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay Knight. I'm the Director of Platform at Chicago Ventures. Chicago Ventures is an early stage venture capital firm based here in Chicago. We invest in early stage tech companies, and that is how I know many of the women on this panel today. So Project 44 is one of our portfolio companies. As Vikki mentioned, she has worked for, I think, 5 or 6 now, Vic, of our portfolio companies. We keep moving her around because we love her so much, although Clearcover is not one of our investments. But, you know, we love keeping her in the family. My career path into venture, which I've been in for about 6.5 years now, is fairly non-traditional. I think if you listen to any venture capitalist talk about how they got into venture capital, they'll start with that same line. No kid really grows up saying, I want to be a VC. I would say common threads for me in my career over the past 15 years or so is I've always worked for very small companies, and I've always worked for really entrepreneurial environments. And I think both of those things have kind of led me into venture in some way, which, although, you know, we are a financial organization, we operate like a startup in a lot of ways. We're a small team. We get to build stuff. We get to work with startups. We get to try new things and be really entrepreneurial. So it's been a bit of a winding path to get here, but I've been here for 6.5 years and not looking back.
Sounds like all of you are saying pace is an important heartstring to have if you want to work in this industry.
I think so. Yeah.
Which is great. I'm the same way. When I'm going faster, I'm better and more productive. So I love it.
Great. Adrian, do you want to kick us off with first question? Should we dive in or?
Sure, let's do it.
Let's do it.
I could talk to all of you and hear so much more about all the stories. So let's get into questions and see how we can time in and find out more. So Beta, thank you for watching our trailer and supporting the series. We really appreciate it. You guys are the ones that have inspired us. So Leanie or Delta, which character do you relate to more than the other, if one, and why or why not? Ally, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I think if I can say, I think I'm a blend of both, good and bad, right? So Delta seems to have a level of perfectionism to her that I definitely fall victim to, I would say. And I battle, working at a startup, it's, perfection versus progress sometimes. And so there's a level of perfectionism that I always kind of feel and strive for. And sometimes that's not achievable in our lives. So I think that's a part of Delta that I really relate to. But Leanie kind of is moving into this stage where she wants to make her own rules. And I think I had a similar motivation when I moved from corporate to startup world, where it was like, I kind of wanted to do my own thing and make my own rules and set my own boundaries and my own strategies and just run. So I really do kind of appreciate that character when I watch the trailer and the episodes as well.
Great. Anybody else have a strong impulse on a character?
Thinking, I wonder if we could all guess what each other's would be.
Oh, that's fun.
Vikki is a Delta. In a good way, in the best way.
Accurate.
What about Michelle? What do you think Michelle is?
Michelle.
I actually said the same thing, Ally, in that I'm a little bit of both. I mean, I'm like Leanie. I'm a first generation, so my parents are immigrants. So I, that resonated really closely with me. But differently from Delta, I always kind of my parents instilled in me that work hard ethic. But differently though. There was that competitive spirit, and I always kind of have that. But I felt like, that it was more through relationships and partnerships and so forth, not necessarily, I got to go be that number one all the time, or that I have to be at the top of the only one there. But it was more through the partnerships and relationships that I could succeed. So a little bit different. So a little bit softer from the Leanie side, but, a blend for sure.
I love that.
Ally or Vikki, what do we think, Lindsay? Leanie or Delta?
I have to say, I would say more Leanie, but a combination too.
Really?
Right?
Really?
You pave the way and open the doors for so many people. Like, you're always looking to help people out. Like, I think that's something about you that everybody has come to know about you.
It's interesting because, like, you think about both, and I think, like, we have to grow into these things about ourselves. So I think my natural inclination and tendencies are Delta for sure. I will, like, in my 20s, it was a lot of ready, fire, aim, like run through walls. And I think I am, and do too many things, frankly, try to do a million things well, which is impossible. I think now I'm trying to, like, lean into more being, being Leanie and like being more intentional and trying to do a few things really well. So I don't know. I think there's something to be learned from both. How about that?
Great.
I like that.
Yeah. Great. Well, speaking of, these two characters in this story, we wanted to speak to these two extreme sides that are kind of within all women, within all people, to be honest. But of course, as women, we can feel a little bit more torn, or we rarely get to see both sides of us expressed in that way. And so as we look at how stories impact us, one of our first questions is, what stories, we're talking about leaders in tech here, what stories impacted you growing up, and what did they tell you about women, what women could do or couldn't do, and what kind of leader you had to be in order to succeed?
Yeah,
I can take this one.
Oh, go ahead, Lindsay.
Sorry, Michelle. I was thinking about this. I love stories. I'm on the board of a theater here in Chicago. I think storytelling is so important, and is something we as people in the startup world are constantly doing. I mean, storytelling is selling in a lot of ways if you're raising money, if you're trying to get your first customer. So I think stories are incredibly important. I've always been a big reader, especially as a kid. And I was thinking about, some of the stories that I loved growing up, and didn't really realize this until I started thinking about this question, but a lot of my favorite stories featured really strong female protagonists who were just kind of like no nonsense, went out and, took action. So, child of the 90s, admittedly, big fan of like Babysitter's Club books. I loved Harriet the Spy. I loved Nancy Drew. Those like girls, I guess, were kind of the people that I identified with when I was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, and kind of looked to those girls as role models, people who are, doing whatever they wanted to do, solving problems, going around problems rather than through them, and kind of not letting, the older men, I guess, in their lives tell them what to do.
I love that. Nancy Drew, I haven't thought about her in years.
Loved Nancy Drew.
I know.
Oh, old school.
Anyone
Michelle, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I did. So Wonder Woman came to mind for me. I loved her. And same thing though, Lindsay, strong, really great, role model. I mean, but at the same time, I was thinking about this, that question was great, by the way. I love that she could go out there and just, with her lasso and her, her bracelets and just kick butt, and didn't matter who it was. She was this superhero. But at the same time, I'm like, why is she wearing this outfit? You know, she didn't need to wear, like, she was almost like, you know, I mean, she didn't need to wear this outfit. So it was almost like, here's this woman that was so strong, but at the same time, you know, whoever dressed her probably was, I'm going to be completely, you know, I mean, they didn't need to necessarily dress her that way. So it was an interesting, as I was thinking about it, I immediately, you know, Wonder Woman came to mind as this really strong role model for me. But then as I was thinking about it, then so many women become, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Just, you know, just materialized by how they're dressed. And so it was almost like, well, wait a minute, why was she dressed that way? So it was almost, you know, I thought for a second there, well, maybe was that the intention in how she was dressed? I mean, still, she was a strong role model for me, but it made me think twice as I was thinking about it, you know? So
it'd be interesting to see if costume design done by a man.
Well, there's a fantastic
right, exactly, right?
Actually, the creation of Wonder Woman is amazing, right? Like that, the Dr. Marston, Dr. Marston and the Wonder Woman is the story of the creation of Wonder Woman. Yes. And fantastic film. So if you're a Wonder Woman fan, like definitely watch it. I won't explain it here because I go on to the inappropriate, but yes, great points, and you'll enjoy that movie.
Okay.
Lindsay, I'm curious, with being with a VC firm, do you find that the companies that you are excited about often have stronger stories versus stronger business? Yes, you need the business plan, but is it, it's the heartstring, it's the story, it's the passion behind it?
You know, we love all of our portfolio companies equally. So they're all great. But like the more fun ones to talk about are the ones where the founder has what we would call founder market fit, but like the ability to use their story and their background and their experience, A, to have built their business, and then B, to, you know, we'll just say sell the business, meaning like sell it to potential employees, people they're trying to recruit, sell it to potential investors they're bringing in. Project 44 is a great example of this. We have another company called No CD that, and now I feel like I'm getting to a big pitch here. Basically, the founder has OCD, and he ended up, you know, not being able to be diagnosed, built this app to serve the community that he was a part of. So that storytelling from a founder's perspective is really important when you are a startup raising capital, and having that personal tie to the business is crucial.
Yeah, absolutely.
Storytelling helps throughout, like when you're hiring too. Like if you don't have a good story to tell, it's hard to get people excited. Like we sell auto insurance. That is not exactly exciting. And I know Project 44, I mean, transportation, you don't wake up and say, I love logistics and transportation. You have that story, and it has to be something like that you can get people to rally around and get excited. And I think that as women, we do a really good job telling stories sometimes. And I think we discredit ourselves sometimes. We let a lot of men be the leaders because they come up with some ideas, and we need to do more of taking control in that scenario.
Yeah, well, and I think the other thing that I want to just mention about stories too is like the level of authenticity, right? Like there's a lot of people that can craft good stories, but are they authentic to your startup, to your brand? That's what Lindsay was talking about with founder market fit, right? Is that a true story that someone can get behind? And can passionately say that. And I think everyone has a platform right now. Everyone can go scream to the internet and say something. And I think the startups and the companies that really hit their hyper growth are the ones that do have that authentic story behind it that's true to who they are.
Great.
Well, I think that is a perfect segue into our next question, which is, why do you think it is? Is it a lack of stories that leave us with fewer women in tech in these leadership roles? Is it less stories that show us these women doing these roles and showing us what's possible? Or what do you think that gap is attributed to, and how do you think we can help to bridge it?
I think Ally and I might have had many conversations about this recently, not that long ago. And I think what's really hard for women is in the tech industry, you know, and we all said this, you have to work at a very fast pace. You have to work a lot of hours. And oftentimes if we have women have families and they're the caregiver, the primary caregiver. And we, as you know, we were raised thinking, I think I told this story to Ally, like when you watch old movies, women took over when the men went to war. And when the men came back, they wanted to keep working. So they said, I will still make dinner. I will still keep the house clean, and I will keep my job.
Mm-hmm.
I will make less than that. That is okay because I'm getting to go to work. So I'm so appreciative of that. And I think that we've got to continue to shift. Ally does a really good job. I told her it took her till I was 40 till I told my husband, like, you can do laundry too. So we take it all on. So it's very hard sometimes when you have to work at the pace and you have to work the hours that it takes in the tech startup world, because you have to be committed. And sometimes you worry that it's going to be perceived as you're not committed, or you can't give as much. So you just say, you know what, I'll wait on this role. You know, I'll wait for this role. Mm-hmm. Because and I did that. I waited till my kids were a little older before I took a job that was fully in the city. And now I'm like, I should have just empowered people around me more and not worried about it. And I told Ally, I'm like, I'm glad you're learning it earlier than me.
Well, it's yeah, it's tough, right? Like, I think personally, I've already talked about this. I'm a perfectionist. I'm a control freak. And the reality of my life is that I can't be a perfectionist and I can't control everything. And that's both at work and at home. There are trade-offs, there are sacrifices. And I think being a working mom and an executive at a startup, like, I need more help than I've ever needed. And I think I fight, you know, the both self-imposed and societal pressure on a very regular basis to be perfect. And if the bar is that you can do everything, that you're the perfect mom, that you're the perfect executive, that you work all the hours, that you can do everything at any point, if that's the bar, like, you're always going to fail. And you're never going to be good enough. And so I think a lot of women might, you know, in a similar state, say, be less inclined to step up or fight for that role or take a seat at the table because they don't think they can do it. They don't think they can be successful. But I think it's kind of stepping back and realizing that success might just look a little different across, like, the board.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And actually, since we have human resources too here, as far as tech culture, as we see company culture shifting, right? And the move to more virtual work, so work-life integration. Are you guys starting to see more support systems and, like, you know, in company and employee experience and in culture building to support women and men, to be honest, but oftentimes it is women that play the double role? Yeah.
I actually think, you know, if there's going to be a silver lining in COVID, that might be it, right?
Yeah.
So I got 3 more hours back in my day by not having to leave the house every day. Now, it doesn't mean I work less, it just means I work more. That's okay. But I think we're learning that, hey, you can do this and be effective. And you know what? If a kid runs in the background, the world's not going to end. It's okay. And I think now that men are having to do this and having to juggle too, because everybody's at home, I think that people are getting more and more understanding. I think that, you know, companies that pivoted and said, you know what, we're not even going to go back to an office. I think that it's going to change the way a lot of women start thinking about, wait, maybe I can do this because I could balance it, because I can jump in here and do this and still run and get my kids somewhere when I need to. So, you know, but still be 100% in.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there were a lot of, there were experiments already going on in terms of that workplace, work-life integration happening, right? But this major shift that was forced on all of us, or many of us, to work remotely has proven that we can do it effectively. And I agree with you, Vikki, that a lot of those pieces are going to stay. And what I think is really the outcome of it is that flexibility, giving and that empowerment to team members and giving them that choice, right? I mean, on the flip side of that is that, you know, there's a lot of folks that miss the interaction of, you know, working with your colleagues side by side. Zoom is great, but, you know, that day-to-day, face-to-face, people miss. And so, but having the flexibility to make those choices of, you know, whatever those reasons are, whether it's family related or just out of choice or whatnot, I think that's the outcome that's really going to come out of it. That, to your point, really gives the flexibility for whatever those needs are, if it's family related or personal related, back to the team members. And the outcome is a win-win for everybody, for the company as well as for the individuals. So yeah, I think it's a good thing, actually. One of the silver linings from this whole crazy time that we're living in right now.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I think a reality too of the worlds that we all live in terms of startup and venture is that they're incredibly network driven. So venture capital is an industry that it's about who you know, it's about who you can get to, who you can talk to. And traditionally, networks and venture capital have been mostly white men, a lot of whom have gone to the same colleges. And in early stage investing, at early stage startups, like, you are fighting to get to the next day. You are fighting for your next customer. You're fighting for your next employee, and you don't have a lot of data to work off of. So historically, people have, rather than spinning wheels and spending a bunch of time trying to bring people into their networks that they don't know, that don't look like them, who, don't check a bunch of boxes, they go to the people that they know, usually that, those are the people that look like them. So, not just for women, for people who are underrepresented in any way too, I think, the tech industry and venture capital absolutely have more these kind of like systemic issues with the way that they have been built over time. I think that is shifting now. I really do. We can probably talk about this more later on. I know there's some questions about it. I think people are working to be more intentional in how they're building their networks. I think they're trying to be more open to bringing people around them that might have untraditional experiences, and specific to this conversation too, and what was referenced, to being more flexible in how we work and hours and responsibilities and where you work, and are more open to different types of an hourly day, a block day of work, for instance, which I think is helpful to people with families, to people who have to care for parents, to people who have other things going on in their lives. So there's a lot. It's like it's a big question. Like, why aren't there more women in tech? I mean, there's a lot to it. I think a lot of good points have been hit on, but I think something to just like keep in mind is like, this has been going on for a long time, a really long time, and it's going to take us a long time to unwind it too.
I think that is a very good point that we tend to forget, even as women ourselves. Like, we want to make a shift and get more women in tech, but to your point, Lindsay, it's been this way for a long time. So we're making a shift here, and the shift doesn't happen overnight, right? It takes time, and I think we also to Ally's point, like, we get so hard on ourselves. I do it, even with hiring. Like, we recently hired, 2 men, and someone said, you couldn't have found a woman. I'm like, yes, I wanted to, I tried, but you feel guilt, you take that guilt on, but we have to remember this didn't appear overnight, and it won't shift overnight. And we all just have to commit to helping each other and make that happen.
Yeah.
Well, I can't speak as a mother, but I cheers the women that do it all, because it's my biggest fear. And I watch friends, and I watch colleagues, and I watch leaders like you all, and it scares me. I'm like, I could spend the next lifetimes learning new tasks, and I'm not a tech leader, but I could be. But if I want a family, that's a decision also. So it's incredible to watch. And in the midst of building teams, Lindsay, as you were saying, and being conscious about bringing people into leadership teams, and certainly underrepresented groups, women, but also other groups as well. But specifically, do each of you find that it is harder or easier to work with rooms full of women? And there's no wrong answer here, because both sides are an interesting conversation to have.
I'd actually like to push back on that question a little bit.
Yeah,
I can throw a little spice in the mix. Maybe we have opinions about it individually, but I think it's kind of a tough, maybe even unfair question to ask, because we as women we're not a monolith. We don't all operate the same. I'm sure we've all had experiences of working with women who are incredible, everybody on this call, and women who are awful. The same with men, the same with like any type of group. So I personally want to hold off from answering and kind of hesitate to even, think about an answer to the question, I guess, because I don't want to like inject any biases. So that was my initial reaction. I don't know if others have thoughts too. I don't mean to shut down anybody that has an opinion about it, but that was kind of my original, initial feedback when I saw the question.
Yeah.
Linz, I was going to say the same thing. I was going to really say that, I think recognizing that 100% of women do not act, work, or lead the same any more than 100% of men do, right? And so there's a lot to unpack in that question. I've worked brilliantly with individuals of all different backgrounds, and I've worked horribly with the others as well, and that's probably more of a personality or time and place thing.
I love that. And I love, Ally, the way you just, I feel like that should be a quote on the wall, which is, you can't classify women, or now I'm going to mess up your quote, but not all women, you can't classify women all as one type of working group. We don't all work the same. We don't all operate the same. And I think that's important.
Yeah. But what I will say is that the leaders that I have worked with and for, who I felt, that I still look to as mentors, those are the individuals, whether they're male or female, have been ones that I felt very supported by, that they really understood how I wanted to grow and develop. And they really helped me to grow and develop, and that meant, hey, Michelle, you needed to do this, or, gave me the guardrails, gave me that guidance. But, so it was really more of the qualities of their leadership as opposed to their gender, and really being intentional about that leadership. So, and that's all about just pure leadership. And we've all had really good leaders and bad leaders.
Yeah.
Right.
And actually, as we look at leadership styles generally, and again, we're going to kind of speak to this at a few different points, but we'll go ahead and just start with alpha. The idea of, come across, alpha means has different interpretations, obviously, for everyone, but we just wanted to see if you had a particular experience with alpha culture. And this can be, obviously, it does not necessarily, we're not just talking about men, that it's alpha culture is something that affects all of us. So if you have any thoughts, experiences with it, what you think about it or not.
I think within the tech startup, that is a characteristic that you have to almost have. A lot of our employees have that too. Like they're that alpha person. They want to take charge, do things. They're entrepreneurial. They want to get things done. And I think it's all about just being respectful of each other during like at the work, when you're working together, when you're partnering together. And to Ally's point, like she said, there's people we work really great with that bring different things to the table, and then there's people that you just don't. But at the end of the day, it's whether or not you're driving towards the same goal, and if you're all focused on getting there, it makes it a lot easier. Versus if you don't have clear goals, then you're kind of going all over, and then that's when I think those alpha personalities conflict.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes too here, I think about communication styles, right? Because I think there's certain characteristics, I think probably all of us on this webinar have alpha personalities in some way. I think communication styles are where it's really important, right? Like, are you assertive but also respectful? Are you trying to find a balance between different perspectives of others and find the right path forward and take into account different backgrounds and point of views? Or are you more kind of aggressive and kind of commanding? And sometimes that is effective and sometimes it's not, to build consensus. But I think sometimes the rub might be with alpha culture less about the go, go, go perspective and more about a communication style that might be off-putting to others that might not be as aggressive with, how they communicate.
Yeah, I would extend that and add emotional intelligence to it. Yeah.
Lindsay,
I think venture capital has a stereotype of having a lot of alpha people in it, a lot of loud extroverts, networkers, people who are going to pound the table to get deals done. And that is certainly true. That doesn't always work. I think, it can be a difficult industry for that reason. If you're somebody who is more reserved, maybe more of an introvert, and you're not going to try to be the loudest voice in the room or the most aggressive, it could hurt you from a career perspective. That said, I have seen some really incredible, quiet introverts who are great VCs because, they take in a lot of information, they learn, they're curious, they don't charge forward without, a thought to their action. And when they speak, their voice really matters because they only say things that are important. So I think though the alpha culture is probably one that's dominant in venture capital, I think the beta piece too is important and can work really well in a firm.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really interesting as Carly and I were writing with beta, we knew Delta was going to be the alpha type leader and Lini was more about teamwork and togetherness. Let's do this together. But it was an interesting conversation to explore, and kind of going back to that we kind of all have both sides in us. And sometimes both of those sides are necessary to lead effectively.
Right. And that there's a positive and a negative attribute to both, right? There's alpha when it's strong, but then it's when it becomes toxic, when it becomes over domineering and shuts people out. Adri, should we take a look at beta culture while we're on this topic, or I'm just taking a look at our questions because we kind of addressed, yeah?
Sure.
So if we were to,
oh, Carly, we lost you. I think what she was going to go into is just to ping off of the alpha culture question was, are there places in your industry or times in specific environments that you would prefer more of a beta culture where you think it works more effectively? Or do you prefer being in this fast-paced tech world? Do you think that the alpha culture is what's necessary to get things done and works?
I don't think it's one or the other, right? I think that there's going to be times where you need that alpha and you need to just drive forward, to Lindsay's point earlier. But then there's times where you start to be like, okay, I have to be more intentional. I have to take a step back. I got to think things differently. I think it's got to be a constant combination. It can't just be one all the time.
Yeah. Well, and as female leaders, do any of you feel that you lead differently than your male counterparts, or that you have had to learn things a certain way as women, or just as executives and leaders in your companies that are a necessary part of those roles?
Well, I'll say, I think as women, and maybe this is just me, but I think maybe it's from being a parent, maybe it's, I don't know, but I feel like I'm actually better at having difficult conversations than most of the men, right? So, which might be why you see a lot of women in the head of people roles. But I feel like a leader can give good feedback, and sometimes men struggle to give good feedback. And I think it's because as women, we have to learn to do that earlier in our lives, like with friends and relationships. I think, I don't know, maybe that's not the reason, but I just feel like anytime there's a tough situation, most of our leaders are like, oh, you can have that conversation first. And it doesn't faze me because I think too, because we are genuine often and we know where it's coming from a genuine place, it's easier to have the conversation, right? Like we genuinely empathize more and we can relate sometimes a little bit more. So I think sometimes to make it easier to have those conversations.
Yeah. Vikki, I do think that perhaps because we're both in people, I think maybe that just kind of comes with the role. Both having those difficult conversations, coaching other leaders to have those difficult conversations, and doing that with an authenticity and an empathy. So I agree with you. It's not easy to do, but yeah.
Ally or Lindsay, anything you want to add there?
I think about this a lot, and I do have a unique leadership style. As Lindsay has one, Vikki has one, Michelle has one. Carly and Adri, you both do too. I think that part of that is probably because of my gender, but part of that's also because of who I am, and a lot of the experiences I've had along the way. And so, I think I think gender is one lens to look at this through, but there's so many other factors too. It's the challenges I've been through, the adversity I've had, the relationships I've had, the mentors I've had. There's so much that goes into making up you and your leadership style. And it's something that we're always learning from. And I learned from all of the other leaders that I experienced, both internal at P44 and external. And so I think, there's definitely some generalizations that you can see, some trends that you can see with generally how women lead versus men. But I think there's a lot of other factors that we just want to keep in mind as you're thinking about, who these individuals are and the type of people that they are.
Yeah, I do think it shifts over time. And I think it also, your perceived style can shift contextually based on the organization you're working with. So, while we all have day jobs, we also have some side hustles too. We serve on boards, we work with other organizations. Yeah. And I know personally, I've done some work with a couple nonprofit boards and have been in some leadership positions in those organizations. And I'm probably, earlier in my career was much more alpha in those roles because I was, I had a little bit of power. I was in a leadership role where my day job, maybe not so much, kind of more middle tier. And I think depending on where you sit in the organization, what the organization is, what your role is, your style might shift slightly depending on, all of those factors, I guess.
Carly, did we get you back here?
Can you?
Oh, yep. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Great. Well, I love what all of you are saying, and it's so hard because we do have these big categories. Like there is a difference. I think as women, we do have slightly different experiences, especially in male-dominated industries. But at the same time, we're all individuals, and sometimes there isn't enough conversation around the uniqueness of each female as well, and we can kind of brush over, brush over that. Mm-hmm. So I would love to hear just from each of you, if you had just 2 sentences or so on what you do to empower more women to come into the industry, or, just generally in your life, like if there are certain barriers that you hear over and over again, if you do notice between women and men, and possibly not, but just any thoughts in that area on what other women can do as well.
Yeah, I think women in tech in Chicago, this group, to be certain, many of others that are in our network do a lot to lift each other up. I think the Chicago tech community as a whole is pretty collaborative, even the venture capital community, though we can be sharp-elbowed if we're, trying to win a deal or something. Generally, we like to collaborate. And so that's something I think about a lot too is, the 4 of us on this call, how can we work together to bring other women into the network? We've built really good, strong, deep relationships where I know that if Vikki emails me about something, like I am going to pay attention to it. And I know she's going to do the same thing for me. So I think there's a level of trust that we've all built and are intentional about building. When I'm sure all 4 of us get emails all the time from young women who are trying to get into the industry. And, I pay special attention to those emails. I think you feel a certain responsibility to kind of, reaching a hand down to at least share some of your experience and perspective. And maybe there's not something tactical you can do in the moment, but at least, creating that connection for the time being is, I think, and I hope, impactful to people who are maybe coming up behind you. So, a lot of it is like, this is kind of a theme for things I've been saying. It's network driven. It's how do we all work together and help each other out and not compete, but be collaborative to, advance in our careers and in our lives.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think, I'll go next here. I would echo anything that Lindsay would say. I think sometimes you can feel a little bit on an island, right? Sometimes you can feel like you look around the room and nobody understands what you're going through because they don't look like you. And they probably don't have the same experiences as you. So I think, a great example is the Chicago, women in tech community. Maybe it's not formal, but like, I think I've called anyone on this panel multiple times saying, I need to talk to you about something. Mm-hmm. Good, bad advice, venting, whatever it may be. I think we lift each other up and we support each other. And with that, we all learn from each other and become stronger. And I think those informal conversations, those informal networking and connections are what make us all stronger and better. And it doesn't have to be that we're all going through the same thing. The experience I have at P44 might be different than the experience Vikki's having at Clearcover, and our personal lives might be in different stages. But I think there's a level of both empathy and compassion that is really important to help keep us driving forward.
Great. Love that community aspect.
I think it's important too, like the more people see that, the more that we can show that we can support each other, and the more people see that, then it's easier to take that leap into tech, right? Okay, wait, if I see all these women doing it and they've got a great support network, maybe it's not as scary as I think it is, right? And I think if we can keep encouraging that, and I definitely, every college kid I come in contact with, I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you going to do that? Let's talk about it. Someday I'm going to have a lot of money and that's all I'll do. It's just help the college kids. I'm telling you, like nobody really gives that direction. It's just like, that's a college. So
Yeah.
It's so true. I mean, I felt like going into college. I knew my whole life I wanted to be in the arts, and I was always an actor, but I kind of didn't know what other options I had. It was like, be a doctor, be a teacher, be a lawyer, be an actor. That's what I thought I could do, or be an astronaut, which was like the other thing my parents couldn't wrap their heads around. So I think even being on panels like this, and Carley and I, our hope with Beta is, to foster these conversations, because even listening to each of you speak, it's inspiring. And it's like, I might not know what that means, but at least I know if I ask the right questions, or if I ask any questions and just take the journey, that I can maybe find my way, and that there is a role that I could fit into if that's what I was interested in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Michelle, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned in my intro, I mean, I started out in tech, and then I was in a lot of different industries until last year when I came back into tech. And I was intentional in coming back into it. And even though I've been in the people space for a long time, just coming back into tech, I mean, I would echo what everyone said. The welcoming and the sense of community has been amazing for me. I mean, I felt fairly connected to the HR community within Chicago, but there's this sub-community within HR in tech, which has been amazing for me, just as a support for me. So I'm paying that forward, as and continuing to strengthen my network, and the same with anybody that has questions, like how can I connect with those folks? So it is all about that community and strengthening that community and helping each other out. It's not about the competition amongst each other for the talent, although it is that too. But still, what is that sense of community, and how do we strengthen that?
Ally, you mentioned earlier that prior to coming into the tech industry, that someone came to you and said, I think you should change career paths. What was your reaction to that? And did you even know what that meant when someone said, did someone recommend you should go into tech, or was it a field you found yourself navigating?
Yeah, it was it was my manager. So when you hear your manager being like, I don't think you're in the right career, you're like, what the hell? But I think what we think a lot about what we like to do. And sometimes we don't like to think about what we don't like to do. But I think those negative sentiments, especially early on in your career, would help point you towards the right path, because it is a journey. And there were so many things about my job early on that I really did enjoy. And it wasn't until someone was like, hey, I think you're a better fit for XYZ because you like to move fast, you like to build, you don't follow much protocol. And in the end, you're motivated. Like, I feel productive when I see immediate results, and I feed off of that. You're a large corporation where it takes 6 months to set a proposal and move a project forward. Like, I wasn't my best self. It wasn't where I wanted to be. And so I think individuals that have like these mentorship relationships, whether they be a friend, a manager, or someone internal or external within your organization, I think those relationships are really helpful, because someone is seeing something that I was not, and really helped me kind of start to think about outside of the box, something I had never thought of before.
It's great.
It's really cool.
Yeah. It's so important. It's so great when you have managers or people in your community, in your support network, that it sounds like are paying attention and actually, you know, because it's very easy just to be like, oh, you're not a good fit, get out. You know, but it's very different. I think as leaders, talk about being conscious leaders that are trying to change things, that if you can pay attention to what would kind of navigate somebody into a better direction, that's the add-on that makes such a huge difference in somebody's life, that most people, you know, we're just not paying attention to.
One thing that I also think is interesting that I've heard all of you say today at some point, which if we're talking about career paths here for our youth or for anyone watching that's interested in getting into this field, you know, it seems like an incredible place to be, to watch hypergrowth, to be a part of or watch hypergrowth companies go from, you know, 0 to 100. Seems like a really cool experience. I mean, you're changing the world.
You get to wear many hats.
All right. Well,
wait, did we miss? I feel like we missed a question.
No, we covered them.
We didn't say, does anybody want to add? Hold on. I think we do have one. Men, like, how can they support, or how do they empower? You know, right? We'll bring them in for a second. In your experiences, when do you find, you know, have men supported you, or what things have been most helpful and most empowering to you personally that you've seen men do?
I have some thoughts about this. I think, like, you know, let's just like pull out of this conversation into the broader conversation about race in our country right now. You know, I think a lot of us, I know a lot of us on this call consider ourselves allies in many ways. Obviously, we are all women in tech, so for women in tech, but for people who are underrepresented too, I think a lot of men, and we'll keep it specific to tech, but I think a lot of men are really questioning themselves right now and trying to understand, you know, have I contributed to problems of systemic bias? You know, have I been an ally? Have I done enough? You know, maybe we all kind of look at ourselves and we're like, well, we've mentored, like we've done charity work, you know, we've kind of checked a bunch of boxes. And now, you know, again, talking about racial inequality, but this certainly touches on gender inequality too. You know, now I think people are really trying to understand, okay, well, what can we actually do to make a difference and make an impact and pull people up, and not look at people who don't look like us as a charity, but look at people who don't look like us as people who can be good business partners and good investments, and good candidates for our team. And so I think the world is having that conversation. This certainly happened more with gender a couple years ago, specifically in tech and in venture around the Me Too movement. I mean, we have moved slightly more toward gender parity in venture and tech in those last couple of years. And I think we're, you know, going to be thinking about race more moving forward. The thing I will say, and a kind of a tagline going around the venture community right now, is hire and wire. So, you know, don't just give money and donate money and talk about it. Hire a Black person, invest in a Black person. And the same can be true for women. So, you know, hire a woman for your team, invest in a woman in some tangible way. If you're hiring them, I know everybody on this call will back this up. You know, think about the equity you're giving them. Make sure you're paying them fairly. Make sure that you are putting them in a position that is the same as everyone else on your team, you know, males and females alike, and giving everybody equal opportunity. Equity in startups is huge, and it is a potential great wealth creator. And historically, equity has been given more to men than to women. There's a company called Carta that did a big study on this a year ago or so, and you can go look it up. So like the pay disparity is large, but the equity disparity is even larger. So if you are a man who wants to help women or help people that don't like you, look like you, you know, hire them and pay them, basically.
Love that.
Absolutely.
I do think there's a lot of, like, I know our CEO, I mean, he really was like, wow, he did a lot of reflecting and felt like, you know, he hasn't done enough and he wants to do more. But to your point, we all have to do a better job, because we can't, again, one person can't do this, right? And I've been preaching that to our organization lately, because people want to see the change, and we definitely want the change, but I can't do it. Michelle can't do it. Like, we have to do it as a team and like really help lift each other and help, you know, if you want to hire more Black people, help me. Like I told my team, like, help me do that. Like do not have that network, and I'm trying really hard to improve that network, but I need their help. And I think we have to say, hey, raise our hand, I need your help to do this, but I want to do it, but help me do it. Because I don't think one of us can do it alone. None of us can do it alone.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a great point.
Yeah. Lindsay, I would just echo what you just said. And I was actually on a webinar yesterday that they talked about this, where it's, the donations to, the big funds out there are important, but it is about looking internally to your organizations. And it goes back to, what we were talking about too, in terms of what are those internal process systemic changes that you're making, and the intentionality around, that you want to make sure that whether it's for diverse candidates, no matter what, right? On the recruiting side, on how you're developing them, how you're growing them, how you're promoting them, if it's women, if it's people of color, whatever it is, that there's intentionality and that you're holding yourselves accountable. And you're right, Vikki, it's not just about the people team doing it, it's everybody. And being very intentional and holding yourselves accountable and looking internally first and holding ourselves accountable as a company, that's how you really start making change, as well as externally with all the community impact, social impact activities and things like that. So totally agree with you.
Ally, anything to add?
I think they covered it. It's being purposeful. It's, putting your actions behind your words. That's a value at P44. We can't just say we're going to do something. We have to put actions behind it and live it. And I think it can't be solved in a bubble, right? Like it can't be solved by one side of the equation. Men and women are equally important when it comes to the gender. And that all has to be kind of come into play when we start thinking about how do we move the needle. And it won't be overnight, right? Like Vikki said before, this has been systemic and it's going to take some time. But if we're all purposeful and we're all working towards, those end goals, then it starts to move the needle.
Mm-hmm. Great. So it's hire and wire.
Hire and wire.
Hire and wire.
I like that.
All right, we're going to push that too. Part of the
Hire and wire.
the Beta In campaign, what we talk about is changing the stories around who and what is worth investment. And I think that's a lot, Lindsay, when all of you are talking about this as far as a team and equity and how to really show up, there is an investment that needs to be made. There's a change in how we think of investment. And I know that it's going around as hire and wire is the it's the trending phrase for that. Yeah. Great. Well,
Kayla, I think we're going to see if we have any questions here that we want to ping in real quick. Any questions from our audience? Looks like we've got one on the bottom here. What are tech companies doing now to attract more women, and what kind of leadership opportunities are women moving towards more in the tech world? So we covered that a little bit, but if anyone has anything they want to add.
I think everybody's making a conscious effort to attract more women. I think doing things like you guys are doing here is what's going to help do that too, right? People feeling like, okay, there are other women in tech and they're in leadership roles and they're doing this and they're doing it and they're enjoying it and they're balancing it all. And I think that seeing that and giving people exposure to that, whether it's sharing stuff on LinkedIn or on your social media too, I think it's getting out there over and over and over and over, and then supporting people when they come to you. To Lindsay's point, like if someone reaches out, take that extra moment because you could be really impacting somebody and helping them get down a path that they wouldn't have otherwise gone down.
Yeah. I think the thing I would jump into is, as Vikki talked about sharing stories, it's sharing authentic stories. Like this isn't easy. And it's rewarding because it's not easy. So share real stories, like talk about the challenges, talk about the difficulties, talk about how you've overcome them, but don't paint a picture that is rosy and perfect and fake because that doesn't help any of us. So that's kind of where I would say is like, as you start to as same with Beta, this is what Beta is doing, is sharing kind of the challenges, but also celebrating, the beauty that comes from it. And so I think that's really important, as we move forward, is don't be afraid to kind of show your real self, because, it might be messy, but it helps kind of everybody understand that it's not going to be perfect, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I actually have one last question for you off, if I know we're pushing time here a little bit, but and it will be different for each of you, but what is your favorite part of your job? And what is the biggest struggle piece that you have to overcome in your job?
I think I'll start. My favorite part about my job is getting to help my leaders develop their people and help them get really good at helping them get good at giving feedback, right? Because I just think it's something that it's just not naturally something people are good at. And so that's one thing I just love. And when it works and it starts clicking for them like that, they feel so good. And it benefits both parties, right? And but I think what is challenging is the same thing is like people aren't really good at giving feedback, and as a leader, being a good leader is being able to help develop people. And sometimes we're just so busy going forward that we don't take the time to like have those conversations. And so it's always a challenge, and it's like pulling them in and saying it's worth this time and investment. And when you do that, you'll see the results of it. And hiring.
I would just ditto what Vikki just said.
Just press the ditto button.
I love what I do. That is definitely it.
I'm not just saying this because you all are on this call with me. I would say this to anybody, and I've said it before. The favorite part of my job is getting to work with like the best people who work in startups and tech, really all over the country, but a lot of them based in Chicago. I mean, I consider the 3 women on this call my colleagues. I only work with 7 people at Chicago Ventures, and I'm in a different role than the rest of my team. So I'm a team of 1. I'm on an island all the time. And I feel so lucky to get to work with 55 incredible CEOs and entrepreneurs and then their entire teams. And I learned so much. I knew, nothing about people ops, for instance, before I started getting to know Vikki and Michelle and kind of building a community of those leaders. So I get to learn new stuff all the time, and it's really fun. I think the most difficult part, I guess just transparently, is venture it's a weird industry where there aren't a lot of clear-cut rules around what's next in your role at your firm. It's not like a startup that you're moving quickly day to day. Things move a little bit more slowly overall, although you are moving with or working with quickly growing startups. So I think there can be a lot of ambiguity around career path and what's next. And I kind of created my role for myself at Chicago Ventures and have built it from the ground up for the last 6.5 years. So something I'm constantly working on and thinking about is how do I create this career path in this role that is somewhat unique? There are not a lot of people in it. How do I keep pushing forward? What does that look like at Chicago Ventures? So I guess it's difficult and challenging. I wouldn't say it's something that I hate. It's not a negative. It's just a good challenge to think about.
All right, so I guess that leaves me. Similar to Lindsay. I think the thing I love, and I've said this a couple of times, I like to build. I started at Project 44 5 years ago, and we were just a handful of people, and now we're this global company, and there's 250 of us, and I don't know everyone's faces, and that's crazy. But with that, my role has changed a ton over the years. The marketing team's grown, it's contracted, it's grown again. We've had acquisitions, we have global employees now. So I think what I love doing is, even though I've said I'm a little bit of a control freak, but taking Google's mentality of giving away your Legos, I've loved bringing people into the team and into the company, giving them, something and watching them excel at it. And they're way more expert and way better at this, unique specialization than I ever was. And so that's been really wonderful to see as like the marketing team has grown. You hire a content manager who's incredible and she's so much more talented than me. And then to watch her just completely excel, at the content program or the event program or demand gen or whatever it is, that's been really, really wonderful to see. I think on the flip side, the challenge is, continuing for myself as I look at my career path to like reinvent myself. Because my role continually changes as I bring more people in and as the team evolves and as the company grows. And so similar to Lindsay, you know, how do I shape my own career path? How do I continue to find new and challenging things to do and, you know, continue to make sure that I'm learning and productive and all of these things. And so it's still a fun thing, but it's one of those, there isn't anything clear, right? And that's what the advice I would give to someone going to an early stage startup or even a growth stage startup is you're not going from brand manager to senior brand manager to brand director, right? Like that path might not be clear. And you might have to shape that. And it's as much on you as it is on the leadership to help you. But if you don't kind of think about what it is that you want and you don't start to like understand that, especially at a hyper-growth company, you might get left behind. And so really making sure that you're thinking about what is it that you want, and then making sure the organization is thinking about how can I help you get there.
Right. Great advice.
Amazing. Well, great. I think we covered a lot. Thank you all so much for sharing your stories and perspectives on this very large topic. We really, really appreciate you being here today. Do you have any plugs or anything that you would like to say before we say our goodbyes?
Any ask for our audience or?
Yeah.
I think I would just encourage them to reach out to any of us if there's anything you can do to help us support them. Like, we're all on LinkedIn, and message us, you know, reach out, we're here.
Awesome.
Yeah, totally. All right, everyone, you heard it. Michelle, Vikki, Ally, Lindsay, reach out to them if you have any questions. You can find them all on LinkedIn. All of you, it's been really special for us to have you and be able to have this conversation together. Thank you for everything that you've shared.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. It was fun.
Bye. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us today. I hope that you enjoyed our fantastic panel of all of these amazing women. My name is Carley Marcel. I'm a news speaker, a producer, an artist, and the founder of Matutine, an experience network that's empowering change agents to serve a thriving humanity. You can find more at carleymarcel.com.
I am Adriana Leonard. I am an actor, writer, producer, and founder of Peanut Productions, LLC. You can find all things about me at www.adrianaleonard.com. This is Beta in Real Talks, part of our Beta in campaign, which you can follow everything about at betatheseries.com. You can also watch our trailer again there as well.
Great. Thank you so much. This episode was made possible by the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, Project 44, Peanut Productions, 2112 Incubator, and the Matutine Network.
We'll see you next week at 3 p.m. for our next panel for our Beta Real Talks. Thanks.